New divers, in this episode, we are going to talk about how to gain dive experience. It's a good one. I'm Diver Dave. We're still in the dive lab, and I've got the coffee. Let's talk about it. It's time to talk about dive experience, because dive experience is really the key to progressing from a new diver to a competent diver into a great diver. That dive experience is what's going to allow you to build your confidence and your skill level. And of course, there's always going to be a little bit of practice mixed in between. And so in this episode, we're going to cover all the angles and all the things that you need to be doing in terms of progressing and getting that dive experience. But the biggest challenge that you're probably going to face as a new diver, because you're all excited, you want to get this dive journey going, man, and all of a sudden you figure out, how can I dive consistently? Diving consistently is really going to be the answer, especially as a new diver, to start to hone your skills in. But diving consistently is hard. It has challenges, and we're going to talk about all of those challenges coming up. My own personal dive journey as a new diver, it was extremely difficult to break into the local dive community and find opportunities to dive. So we're going to share all that info coming up. Let's get into it. If you want to be a great diver, the number one rule is you have to dive a lot. You have to find opportunities to practice, you have to find opportunities to dive, and continue to push your skills and your comfort zone. That is extremely hard to do if you're not embracing local diving. My own dive experience is mostly here in the St. Lawrence River in Ontario, and that is a world-class playground in terms of diving and the challenges it brings in terms of current. It could be cold water, it could be navigation, and of course we have tons of drift and wreck dives to go and visit. So for me, that has been an absolute tool to allow me to continue to progress as a diver. As a new diver, I would highly recommend you work with your local dive shops and find out where all of the local dive spots are. That way you can choose one or two, start to get comfortable, get some experience there, and then keep progressing through the dive spots. This is a great way to gain consistency and of course, improve your dive skills as you start to progress. Remember, there's no secret to this. The answer to becoming a great diver is dive, dive, dive. And of course, some practice. Embrace dive shop weekly outings. Most local dive shops will have at least one weekly outing where they offer up guided tours for new divers. I did this a ton back in the day. In fact, I was jumping between 2 and 3 shops during the week so I could get even more dives in. But this was a really, really good opportunity because these dives are usually led by the shop's dive masters, and so they become a bit of a guided tour. It takes a little bit of the stress off in terms of learning how to navigate the dives, and so that way, it gives you a little bit of chance to slowly build up your confidence and experience. Of course, the next reason is you get to meet new divers and other experienced divers, and this is an awesome opportunity now to sort of network and start to build out your circle of diving friends and folks that you might have opportunities to go and dive with. As a new diver, this is the biggest challenge. And we're going to talk about dive buddies next, but really, as a new diver, this was my biggest challenge, trying to sort of get myself into the circles and find opportunities to dive with other folks. So I highly recommend the weekly dive shop outings. This is the best way to do it, especially in the beginning. Work with your local dive shops, sign up for the events, and this is a great way for you to start to work and build up your diving confidence. Let's talk about the dive buddy. And I'm going to have 2 words for you. Choose wisely. Because the dive buddy, man, can really be probably the biggest impact to your new diver journey, without a doubt. And a dive buddy can make an impact like in a positive way, but also a really negative way, depending on who it is and their approach and whether or not they're even taking this thing seriously. Now, in the beginning, it's going to be very tough because you won't even know what to look for. And unfortunately, as a new diver, pretty much standard practice is you're going to get paired up with a lot of other new divers. That's kind of just how the system works. A great dive buddy is a dive buddy who is going to share the same goals that you have. You want to be a better diver. You want to be a great diver. You want to be a safe and a competent diver. Your dive buddy needs to share that. Your dive buddy needs to be able to want to practice when you want to go practice. When you want to just go and work on some skills, they want to be able to share the same sort of commitment level. That's something that I kind of struggled with in the beginning because I had these real goals and sort of vision in terms of where I wanted to end up as a diver. and I kept cycling through folks who just didn't really share that passion. So you're going to have to really sort of pay attention and choose and ask these questions at the end of the dive. Hey, did we push the limits here? Did we add a ton of risk? Is my dive buddy showing up and adding a ton of stress to this dive? Many people will tell you that they want to get better, but most of them really don't want to put in the time as a dive buddy. Dive buddies will come and go. So you have to sort of learn and take the opportunity to meet as many divers in the diver community as you can. Even better, at some point in the new diver journey, you will get an opportunity to dive with what I would consider a more experienced diver, someone who's been doing this for quite some time, has built up a fair bit of dive experience. And if you're lucky, and if you have taken on skill number 4 from the video we talked about previously, which is humility, you might get invited into their dive circle. And that's the good news. The bad news will be, in order to stay there, you have to continue to be humble. But you also have to maybe take critical feedback. And for most of us in the beginning, that's a bit challenging to take. But like I said before in the last video, someone who is actually taking the time to give you some critical feedback is really someone who cares about trying to make you or help you become a better diver. So do your best just to take that critical feedback, listen to what's being said, be humble, listen to the critique, take the feedback, go back and work on some of the stuff they're talking about, and then come back and show them that you really worked on all of the things that they had told you that you needed to work on. That will go a long way in terms of being accepted into all the different dive circles that exist out there. So dive buddies, take the time to find the right one. So the last thing I'll say on dive buddies is your approach matters, and it'll be recognized. Whether you know it or not, the local dive community is always looking, listening, and watching. And so if you are a new diver that is shown to put in the work, put in the effort, you show up, you're not sort of adding stress to the situation, you are prepared and you're ready to dive, that is going to go a long way in terms of the local diving community forming an opinion on you, which might open up different diving avenues for you. So just keep that in mind. So let's talk about the dives themselves. What are the different dives that I can be doing? Here in Ontario, we are really lucky. We have lots of great shore dives, but we also have lots of great charter dives. And so I would highly recommend that it is a mix between charters and local shore dives. Obviously, you're not going to want to do charters 2-3 times a week because that gets pretty costly. But if you mix it up with a charter dive and a bunch of shore dives every week, now you can really gain some dive experience pretty quickly. My only suggestion there would be just pick the dives carefully. If you're a new diver, then you want to match those dives to your current skill level. If you are a new diver, then I would match those charter dives to your skill level. We have many different levels of charter dives in terms of the experience needed here where we locally dive. So it's a really good opportunity for new divers to match up their skill sets to the dive. But charter dives and local shore dives are the best way to sort of gain that dive experience locally. And guess what? The local shore dives are free. So from a local shore dive perspective, what I would encourage you is at least once or twice, go out with the local dive shop outings, follow the DMs around, start to learn the site. And then once you feel like you're comfortable enough with the dive, then you can take your buddy back and you guys can go and practice that dive together. Maybe take 1 or 2 local shore dives and say, okay, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, these are the 2 shore dives that we're going to focus on and learn together. And I would say the same approach would exist for charter dives. Charter dives are going to range in terms of their degree of difficulty. And so really you want to match ones, especially in the beginning as a new diver, that kind of matches up to your current skill set. That way you can focus on 1 or 2, take your dive buddy and say, okay, for the next few charter dives, let's just redo this one a few times so that we can get used to it. And then as you start to progress, you can start to add on more local and then more charter dives to your current diving experience. That really is a perfect combo to sort of build out your dive experience as you start to progress. Let's take a moment to talk about dive masters. Every shop will always have dive masters, and the dive masters are basically the heart of the shop. The dive masters do all the work in terms of the local weekly outings, the guiding, the coordination, helping the instructors on the courses. And so the dive masters are really the heart of the machine in terms of the local dive shop. So a dive master, if they're a great dive master, is a really good person to watch and learn from. I know for me back in the day, I saw a couple of dive masters And I realized, oh, okay, there is actually a different level to this diving game if I can get there. So I got to put in the time, I need to put in the practice, and hopefully I can get to where these guys are. So you can watch them, how they prep for the dive, how they set their gear up, how they navigate a dive, how do they coordinate a group, how they communicate underwater, the buoyancy control, their fin control, the trim, all of the things that make them a great diver you can start to learn from. My own personal experience as a new diver with a dive master back in the day was, I think I was like 4 dives into it and I had got lost out there on a wreck dive with the local dive shop outing. And thankfully, the dive master figured out we were kind of lost. Shout out to Dive Master Dan. And he took me and my buddy and he got us back on the line. And of course, we got back to shore safely. So that was kind of cool. It just showed me that maybe this dive master thing is probably a goal that I wanted to get to. So always great if you can get time with a dive master, talk to them about their approach. This is how you could learn local dive sites. You could ask them, hey, on this one, how couldn't you navigated it this way instead of that way? And they'll always have some helpful tidbits in terms of trying to make you a better diver. So take the opportunity, learn from dive masters whenever you can. This will definitely help you and your new diver experience. Comfort zone. And how does it apply to a new diver journey? In the beginning as a new diver, probably not a whole lot actually is going to feel comfortable. If you think about the time that you first went under in the pool versus maybe you've got 10 dives under your belt now, how much more comfortable would the pool feel right now versus the way it felt on day one? And hopefully the answer is, well, it would feel a whole lot more comfortable now, Dave. And that's because you have progressed. You have learned to challenge yourself and your skills and your confidence level has grown. It also means that the stress levels have gone down a bit and you have a little bit more CPU power to sort of just deal with and enjoy the dive. So comfort zone is extremely important to keep pushing and pushing yourself out of as a new diver. But the challenge is you have to be careful not to push it out of the comfort zone too much. If you're trying to do a dive that has your stress levels maxed out, your CPU is maxed, there is a guarantee of 2 things. Number 1 is you did not enjoy that dive. And number 2 is you were probably stressed out the whole time during the dive. Well, that combination is just not a great experience. You probably weren't good on your air control. And overall, if you're just surviving the dive, that's probably not a good approach. So from a comfort zone perspective, I always like to mix it up. I want to have a heavy dosage of working and practicing in a dive spot that I'm very comfortable with so that I can progress and learn some basic skills, work on those core foundation skills that we talked about. But at the same time, I want to go out and do a local shore dive that I know is going to stress me out just a little bit. So then what happens is if I do that dive a few times, I've now moved the comfort zone needle a little bit further ahead, and now I've progressed as a diver. And the same approach can be said for charter dives. I want to do charter dives that I'm comfortable with in the beginning, but now and then I want to start to take on charter dives that are a little bit more challenging, allowing my comfort zone to sort of grow. Now, those dives will be a little stressful in the beginning, and of course, I'm going to be nervous, but at least I'm doing it in a more of a controlled way or approach. So that allows me my opportunity to grow without really pushing that CPU to the max. So comfort zone is super important. And you know what? When your dive season starts, don't be afraid to set dive goals and say, hey, by the end of the season, I would like to be doing this, this, and this in terms of the dive. Now, you may not be ready for those dives at the moment, but then you can start to plan out and say, all right, this is what I think is going to take in order to be ready to do those dives by the end of the season. That is pretty rewarding when you can check those boxes off at the end of the season and say, okay, wow, I met my dive goals. Now the confidence level, now my stress levels are down, and I've probably turned myself into a much better diver than when the season started. That, in my opinion, is a great approach. Local dive experience and why it is the key to unlocking your journey to become a great diver. We've touched on local shore dives, charter dives, local dive shops and their weekly outings and why you should join them, the importance of the great dive master and how we can use them as an opportunity to learn from, and then, of course, finding the right dive buddy. That is really the key. And last but not least, comfort zone. Comfort zone is so important to know when to push a little bit out, but also when to pull back in and just work on the fundamentals. I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for subscribing and commenting and watching the videos. It is much appreciated. And if you haven't subscribed, please take a moment, hit the subscribe button below, and I would love to see some comments and feedback on the video. Practice hard, dive safe. Airier, that sounds weird. It will really make you better. And I have a Facebook ping. We are extremely fortunate. I want to do this all in one shot, man. All in one shot. We got to do this all in one shot. We made it to the end of the video, and so now we are in the bonus section. So congratulations on making it this far. And because we're talking about dive buddies and dive experience, I wanted to take a quick moment to say thank you to 3 divers who made a huge impact on me in my first dive season. John, Barry, and Chris. If you're still watching, I just wanted to say a quick thank you. You guys made such a huge impact on my dive journey, especially in my first season. And John, you really put a lot of extra time with me, and I know at times the feedback was a little critical, but trust me, I really appreciate all the effort. Take care.